Hello, dear colleagues and dear our channel viewers, and hello, dear Mihail. Today we are going to have informal discussion with you, and I'm going to shortly introduce our colleague Mihail. Mihail Calalb. He is associate professor and chair of theoretical and experimental physics at Tiraspol State University in the Republic of Moldova. It's quite interesting because, as we discussed some times ago, it's really interesting and useful to know a little bit more about the Republic of Moldova in general and in particular about the education system. And as I found some information, biographical information, Mihail has graduated with Faculty of Physics and Mathematics of Tiraspol State University in 1990s. It's quite relevant and interesting, let's say, timeline or time, because personally I graduated 1 year later in 1991 at Faculty of Nature and Geographical Faculty at Vilnius Pedagogical University, and it was already in independent Lithuania. That it was quite important because previous group in 1990 received old format diploma, but our group in 1991 we received normal Lithuanian original independent university diploma. And as I understood from the information, Mihail has an extensive background as a project developer and manager in the area of education, lifelong learning, youth and adult education. And in addition, as I understood, Mihail is also involved in some non-governmental managerial issues. Also, he's leading at least one organization, as I understood, nationwide educational projects for various beneficiary groups, and also he is the first director of the e-twinning program in Moldova. And has involved 150 local teachers in international projects and so on and so on. A lot of information about you. Please, Mihail, please add from your side by yourself, because it's just formal information and it would be nice to hear from you.
Thank you, Vincentas, very much for introducing me in such a beautiful light. What I could add about me, my main scientific preoccupation is theoretical physics, especially superconductivity, high TC superconductivity. Another domain of my interest is constructivist approach in teaching. There are a lot of constructivist approach today, focusing on how to deal with low motivation and low students' interest for science, especially. And you mentioned my involvement in NGO field. For 20 years, when I was a little younger, I managed many international projects focused on Moldovan orphanages or sheltering institutions in Moldovan internats. I established 20 years ago a network of billiards. So it was an apiculture project. So in each Moldovan orphanage, I established an apiary or billiard. In American language is billiard. In English language is apiary. Apiary and then apiculture classroom. And endowed them with special literature. So the aim was to provide each child with an vocation. In this case, apiculture. It was very, very interesting project. A project for soul, for my soul, besides science and education. After that, I put the foundation for between the program in Moldova. Now they run this important educational program, which links Moldovan teachers from one side and European teachers in joint educational projects. So it is very important to provide such an opportunity for exchange of the experience between our teachers, because our goal as independent nation is European integration.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. It's really interesting. And but from my understanding, it's not so typical, because you graduated in pure physics, and as I understood, you continue to work in this direction at some extent. But at the same time, you are involved in education area in general, or in particular in some branches of education. And as I'm trying now to quite fast to understand why, because I know many colleagues, my friends and also colleagues, who are primarily pure scientists from natural science area, like chemists, physicists, biologists, etc. But at the same time, they are involved in education and working quite extensively in education, and successfully, I would say successfully. And quite often I am saying that they are the best educators. Not those people who are initially started to study, for example, in education or so, but in opposite, the people who are initially have background in real science, in pure sciences, natural sciences, for example, and at the same time they are quite good educators in broad sense, as researchers, as policy makers, etc., etc. Somehow it's your example goes into the same direction.
The answer is very simple, because I teach theoretical physics. Future school physics teacher. So our university is a pedagogical one. So all my students should, after their graduation, should go to school. But they work also in many research institutions in Moldova there is no research institution in Moldova without our alumni from Tiraspol State University. Even the name of our university is Tiraspol State University. Tiraspol is located in Transnistria, the secessionist region controlled by Russia, but the university, even the name is Tiraspol, the university is located in Chisinau, capital city of Moldova. So I'm involved in education by default, I would say.
Okay, as we agreed before, our discussion consists from some thematic parts, and in the beginning it would be really nice to know just the newest information about education system in your country, in Moldova today. Can you briefly describe it? Despite that it's generally in many countries more or less the structure is the same, but at the same time it's yes possible something different.
In order to give you an idea about the size of Moldovan educational system, I would say at this particular moment, we have 1,200 schools, for example. From these numbers, we have about 300 high schools, and number of universities, we have in total 30 universities. From 30 universities, we have 11 state universities and 19 private universities. So the number of universities and the number of schools decreases permanently. For example, 20 years ago, the number of high schools was 500. Now we have 300, and the maximum number of high school students was 260,000 in 2007, and now we have at least 200,000 students in high school, but in university the number of students in this 20 years was decreased twice, from 120 to now we have 60,000 university students. So it is a process of permanent shrinkage or permanent involution.
I also found on website information that official statistics, and it shows that Moldova is experiencing a significant decrease, as you mentioned, in the number of educational institutions, possible different levels, also teachers and students. And for example, you mentioned 2007, but I found compared to the academic year 2010 and 11, and up to 2018, quite long period, total number of educational institutions decreased by approximately 18%. It's quite a radical change. And also you mentioned number of universities. I found that 19 universities in total, but you mentioned 11 state universities. And And at the same time,
because our Ministry of Education decided to close some universities. Last year, in 2020, also there is a permanent process of closing some state universities with small number of students.
But what was the main argument or main reason? Lack of students, financing, or what?
Financing in our country, both for university and for schools, depends, is strongly correlated with number of students. So if the number of students is below a certain level, there is no financial reason to maintain the university or the school. So it is a process of permanent closing.
It seems that you're following the same trend as our country experiencing, because some years ago also some universities in Lithuania were matched together. It means not directly were closed, but for example joined, were matched together with some other universities. For example, my previous alma mater, Vilnius Pedagogical University, and at the late stage it was Lithuanian University of Educational Sciences. It was matched together with Kaunas Vytautas Magnus University, and currently this university, I can say, disappeared from the map, and it's obviously it's a pity. But quite often, not only formal arguments like lack of students, financing, etc., but some not so reasonable political decisions, I would say, at least based on our experience. Because, for example, as my previous university, Šiauliai University, possible you know, it was located obviously in Šiauliai, in northern Lithuania, and it was a regional university, quite good university, but based on some not well underpinned arguments, it was matched together with Vilnius University, and currently we have Šiauliai Academy of Vilnius University in Šiauliai. The main argument I remember was, and quite often in public discourse, that size of university it's matter. It means that we need big universities. It seems that quality of study, quality of education is better in a big university in comparison with small one. But what does it mean, small university, or it's also open question. For example, I do not agree that in so-called small university quality of studies is low or something like that. What would be your position, for example?
Vincentas, I would say, you asked me about our educational system, but we should think that we work in a global educational system. So our educational system is an open one. So the students have the possibility to go continue their studies in other countries. For example, each year about 2,000 students, bachelor, master, PhD student, go to our neighbor in Romania. Other students go to European countries. The number of students permanently decreases, and we are forced to work with few students in academic groups. For example, I have academic groups now composed by 3-5 students. There are, I think, there are some classes because I can allow more time for each student to work individually with them. So even the number of students is quite insignificant, but the quality is the same. Even the number is as it is. We already have good students and very good students. So in each year we have students who come to pedagogical university from their vocation. There are also good students in such difficult times.
Yes, as I mentioned, it's not possible, not directly connected with number of students. As you mentioned, it's really possible to give more time, to give more attention to particular student if you have a smaller number in groups, for example, in academic groups, etc. But obviously it's connected with infrastructure, because in any case you need to keep alive the infrastructure. I mean, university buildings, laboratories, etc. This is cost some money, and maybe not so profitable, I would say. But this is education. We should invest in education. We should take care about our future, about our young generation. And okay, for example, I found it's not maybe the latest information some years ago. According to public opinion barometer, only 1/3 of the Moldovan population believed that the education reforms are heading in the right direction. It's quite negative position. What is current situation, for example? Can you shortly explain?
I think these numbers are strongly correlated with the political situation in Moldova. Now, political situation is changing, and we have an pro-European government, pro-European president, and the general orientation of society is toward European integration. But these numbers reflects quite well the position of social position of teachers in society. For example, in 2014 was adopted the Code of Education. And this Code of Education stipulates the priorities in our educational system. So, there are priority A, priority B, C, D, etc. And the social position of teacher is at the letter P.
And what does it mean, these letters?
I don't know. P, it is about 15 letter in our alphabet. So it is the real attitude of governors to school teachers. So now even the government makes considerable efforts to improve infrastructure in schools, in university. I would give some interesting examples. There is far to be enough because the financial power, let's say, of our government or the general poverty in our country doesn't allow to make significant improves. But about the infrastructure, our Ministry of Education has started a very interesting project to renovate from the roots series of high schools. They allocate about 2 million euro for one school. It is an important amount for infrastructure and for furniture.
And it would be interesting. What does it mean, renovation? What is includes? For example, maybe not only buildings, but also possible laboratories, equipments.
Also furniture, equipment, heating system is very important. Heating system, and we also have some projects for saving energy, so they replace windows, doors, etc. It's also important. And also in university, we have a program, started a very interesting program to endow university laboratories with new equipment, because available now equipment is outdated physically and morally. So it is again 2 million euro per university. For example, for our chair of theoretical physics, we will have about 200,000 euro for equipment. I think it is an important amount.
Yes, obviously.
Yes.
And
but for us it is very difficult to solve problems in education without European funds. Moldova is only associated partner for European Union. We are not member of European Union. Even we are not only candidate like Serbia, let's say, or Turkey. They are candidates, and important educational programs are available for them. For us, only Erasmus and some small programs are available.
Yes, but in any case, I hope that it's really good. At least from my understanding, that Moldova accepted this pro-European or European direction, because as Lithuania, we know very well about our past period, so-called Soviet period, that Lithuania was incorporated and occupied by Russia. And we see nowadays different movements from that side, and quite dangerous movement. And I think also Moldova experiencing some difficulties related to that. But anyway, I hope that Moldova will be successful in the future. And you mentioned that some students are interested to move to go abroad, for example, to Romania, as your neighbor country. It's from one side it's quite understandable, but can you shortly explain, for example, why, based on what, for better quality, or just that it's neighbor country?
Romania is more than neighbor. We speak the same language, we have the same history, we have the same, let's say, the same personalities in literature, in science, in education, in religion. So it is one how to say, it was one country before 18th century, when Moldova was occupied in 1812 by Russia. So we could say that we are 2 centuries under Russia. But why our students choose Romania? Because of many factors. First of all, a Moldavian student in Romania receives stipend.
Special scholarship.
Yes, fee. Important amount for them is important. Also, accommodation is provided for free. Very important. Then Romanian diplomas, European ones, are recognized in other countries. That's why in Romania come students. I saw students from France, for example, who come to study in IAS and Bucharest, because the cost for living are much less than in their countries. So these factors
And
are important.
except Romania, for example, what other countries on the in this case?
We have no official statistic, but in UK, in France, in Germany, there are a lot of our students because I see when in July they publish the results of our exams from graduating exams from high school. There are a lot of students who obtain 10 in our country is the maximum. 10 or 8, let's say 8, for English language. So there are a lot of school students who obtain TOEFL. Yes. So if such a student, school student, has passed through TOEFL and received the TOEFL exam, so we should think that he or she will go abroad.
Because it's a good initial preparation in English, particularly in English language, and obviously it's possible to study quite freely abroad.
American embassy is very active in this direction. We have a lot of programs with our teachers, English language teachers. So they are involved in Peace Corps programs, also some fellowships program. Our school students are involved in exchange programs in United States. So I would say our school students nowadays they know very well foreign languages, much better than science and math.
It's difficult,
but it is the trend, the general trend in our country.
Yeah, but Mihail, I think you also agree with my position. From one side, it's obviously positive. I would say phenomena. Students can go freely to study abroad, to obtain possible good qualification, good education and qualification, obviously. But on the other side, this is like a brain drain for your country. Bright, smart people disappearing, moving abroad. And my question is, are we returning back? Are you observing this trend, for example, after studies, after graduation? Do they returning back to Moldova or not?
There is not a process only brain drain, but also hands drain, because we have in Moldova, for example, companies from Germany, from Austria, working in automotive industry, focused on producing spare parts for automotive industry, and they face permanent shortage in working power. So the majority of our young population, let's say 20, 30 years old, all of them are focused on Europe, to find a job in Europe. And as a result, our villages, mainly villages, are strongly depopulated. And cities, we have 2-3 main cities. They are faced with inflow of young people from rural area. So as a result, our urban high schools, they have there are cases with 1,000, 2,000 high school students in one institution in the urban area, and in rural area we have small high schools with 2 classes with 15, 20 students. So there is discrepancy.
Okay, but are they going to be closed, for example, as so-called small schools, because 50, 60 students?
But the process should be managed very carefully, because if we close a school in village, this village will be completely depopulated. So this is should be the last action to close a school in a locality.
Yeah, for example, in Lithuania currently we're also observing different discussions and possible some reforms in near future in some years, because the idea from ministry is to make some, because we have pro-gymnasiums and gymnasiums like previously lower secondary and upper secondary schools, and some of them possible will be closed. And as you mentioned, in rural areas, in villages, in small towns, because there are some requirements how many students should be in one group, for example, per class, and it's for some current gymnasiums it will not be possible to fulfill this criterion. And some other criteria, and in some municipalities currently quite burning discussion on the progress, because for example, we can imagine in one municipality, I would say 100 kilometers from Šiauliai, so-called Plungė municipality, it is expected 2 or 3 gymnasiums possible will be closed. Based on these new so-called requirements, and it's really important question, and how to solve these problems. From one side, it's obvious that decreasing of students, decreasing of population, it's our reality. But on the other hand, how to transfer these students, how to assure availability of some schools for particular population, etc. It's really difficult, and I think that it's somehow common common sensation for small countries?
Yes, we are passing through a process of massification of rural schools. In order to support this project, Romania, for example, has provided 1,000 school buses for Moldova. This is from one side. From other side, our government initiated a program to renovate rural roads. 1,000 kilometers of rural roads between small localities and small cities to urban from cities, towns, etc. It is a process of reshaping Moldova, I would say, in the same time, reshaping of our educational system. But as I said, the main problem is money.
Yeah, and obviously there are a lot of possible interesting and meaningful information because we can discuss a lot of, for example, just on particular level of education like primary and kindergarten, vocational schools, etc., but we have obviously limited time, and
Yes.
that general picture is interesting and some trend. But one issue is quite important from my understanding, because we know that language of education or instruction under the Soviet regime, I would say regime or rule, was Russian, obviously Russian. In some countries at that time it was quite strong Russian influence. In some countries maybe not so strong, but anyway it was Russian language. And since 1989 Moldovan was adopted as the official language, obviously. And how this education system, your system, responds to the needs of minorities? Because as far as I know, in Moldova, it's quite also relevant topic.
Yes, we have Russian minority, Ukrainians also. I would say we have more Ukrainians than Russians. But this is minorities. It is about up to 20%. Russians and Ukrainians, up to 20%. It's not too much. I would say that if there is a demand for studying in Russian, we open Russian groups in each university. If there are some 10 or 15 students, university will open a special group. But the general trend is to work in Romanian language, in state language. In my teaching practice, I would give examples that in every academic group I have at least one one student Russian speaker, and they learn very well in Romanian language, our state language. So there is no problem for minorities because they understand very well Moldova is separate state, and they should learn and know very well state language, because without knowing Romanian language is very difficult to have a career in any domain. So it is not mandatory to learn and to know Romanian, but the condition is put minorities indirectly to learn Romanian language.
Okay.
I would underline a very interesting moment. When we started the discussion, you mentioned that I graduated in 90, but I would like to say that I learned in Romanian language. So even in under Soviet regime, pedagogical universities, for example, they worked in Romanian. So only technical universities, only medical university worked in Russian language, but other universities in Moldova.
Yes, you are right. You are right. The same was in my case. Obviously, Lithuanian language was the main language, and we studied in Lithuanian language at university without any problems. But on the other hand, it was a different situation in comparison with nowadays, with today's situation. For example, I remember because we needed some textbooks in chemistry or in biology, and majority of them were only in Russian language, and it was needed, it was obligatory to understand, for example, some lab practicums, etc., etc. And
yes,
on the other hand, it was limited.
Yes, you are right. Even the process was in our native language, let's say. But I learned theoretical physics by using Landau books in Russian. So it wasn't a problem.
Yes, it was.
Contrary, I'm glad that I know Russian language, and I can study Russian scientific works, for example.
Yes, obviously. Why not?
In my field, in theoretical field,
language, it's not without political shadow, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, Mihail, time is running quite fast, and our discussion is becoming more and more interesting. And just before closing this topic, another interesting question. Obviously, you mentioned that you have some state universities, 11 state universities, and some private universities. And what is opinion or generally prestige of these universities, for example, private or state universities? Which one are on the top?
On the top, there are only state universities. Private universities, it is a diploma factory.
Oh.
Honestly and shortly speaking, their aim is to make money, but the quality is in state university. There is one exception. We have first private university, Free University of Moldova. If we will translate, Free University of Moldova.
Open university.
But this university is focused on international students. They have a lot of students from other countries, especially from Middle East.
And I remember one proverb, in this case Chinese proverb. I want to remind: if you want 1 year of prosperity, grow grain. If you want a decade of prosperity, plant trees. If you want 100 years of prosperity, invest in people. Sorry, I don't know your local Moldavian proverbs, but this proverb, I think it's quite reasonable in context of investment, in context of our future, young people, etc. To invest in people. But shortly, if possible, please explain your political trend or political direction from political point of view in your country in relation to investment in education.
About investment in education, the annual budget for whole Moldavian educational system, it is about 10 billion of our lei. 10 billion of lei, it means 1/2 billion of euro. 1/2. This 1/2 billion of euro means about 15% from our consolidated state budget. 15% seems to be a lot of money. 15% from the budget, but 1/2 of billion, it is far to be enough. So our rulers, they understand very well the necessity to invest in education, and they try possible and impossible to do. But as I said, Moldova is probably the poorest country in Europe. That's why financing of education for education is very small. I would give an example. I don't know what is the salary the average salary for a teacher in Lithuania. In Moldova, the average salary of a school teacher, it would be about 500
Euros.
500 euro per month for an experienced teacher.
Not so right.
About 20 years of working experience. 500, I don't know, comparing with other countries.
It's reality. What can I say? It's reality. Okay, Mihail, let's go to our next topic,
Yes.
and maybe favorite topic, at least for me. This is science education, because in any case, you also represent this area of knowledge and this area in education. And it would be interesting to know more about how you assess the state of science education in your country, state of art, and for example, science literacy, because it's quite burning and open discussion among young people, in society, public in general, etc. Can you shortly describe?
First of all, I will give the example of PISA results. Concerning Moldova, PISA says that 58% of 15 years old school students, it means ninth degree, 58% of students can understand data provided by a graph or data presented in a table, or understand a text. So in such conditions, when more than one half of school students, more than one half of the class doesn't understand the message of the teacher, it's very difficult to form scientific understanding, because scientific understanding of the world is our main goal, to form this scientific understanding to as much as possible part of population, to make them understand the science. But if
And Mihail,
it's very difficult to work with.
Are these latest results? I mean, from what year? 2000 PISA.
It is the latest in 2018.
2018. Because I know that prior 2015, Moldova participated in PISA in 2009, at least, and it was quite interesting information. For example, that PISA revealed that students' performance in Moldova was below that of their peers in the OECD countries covered by the study. And for example, two interesting moments, discrepancies between students in rural areas and those in urban areas were identified. It means quite large or quite big gap, approximately 2.5 years. It's a really large and big gap. And also, in addition, gender-related discrepancies. For example, boys lagging behind girls in sciences, and especially reading. Are there some changes? Do you observing some changes, for example, from starting from 2009 and till up to now?
Compared with the result of PISA from 2015 and 2018, there is a small improvement, but light improvement, 2-3% in reading, in the math skills, and in science understanding. But when we speak about 60%, 2 or 3%, it is nothing. From our side, the percent of students who understand very well the message of the teacher, or message in text, or the condition of scientific exercise or problem, etc. In Moldova, we have school students at the 6th level in PISA. 6th level in PISA, we have one student in 3 or 4 classes. For example, in South Korea, we have 3 or 4 students, such students, at the 6th level in one class. I think the solution is in student learning effort, in cognitive effort. If we would like to obtain improvement, accession, we should put the accent on learning effort of students. That's why the discrepancy in rural and urban school is so huge, because in the rural area there is no pressure on student effort, and in urban school students are pressed by parents, by teachers, competition between students, etc. So that's why in urban area.
Yes, but Mihail, this is,
yes.
I do understand the context. What are you saying? Because it's at some extent it's common also in our country and possible in some other countries. But currently it's quite, I am not going to say modern or fashionable, but at some extent it is fashionable to speak about interest, about motivation, about student needs, etc., etc. A lot of modern terms and terminology, but quite rarely we are discussing about, as you mentioned, cognitive capabilities, about student effort. I do agree that it's related to with motivation, directly related with interest, with environment in whole, but capabilities, cognitive capabilities, maybe not so good, not at appropriate level, and this is possible the main issue. They are not simple. They are not able to learn.
Vincentas, I'm not agree, because I think if a person is healthy mentally, yes, from such a person is easy to prepare or to form a PhD holder from every healthy person. This is my theory.
Do you mean that everybody has potential to become something?
Yes. Everyone has the necessary potential to achieve the highest level, but the problem is in environment. Environment, first of all, today should be a digital one. So we have to speak in their language. For example, for nowadays students, gadgets are fun, yes? So we should use as much as possible every kind of gadgets. For example, we like to speak about feedback. Yes, when the degree of feedback is high, when feedback is permanent between teacher and student, so in such a way, student knows very well what the teacher wants from him or from her, and vice versa. Teacher knows very well how his students understood his message. Also is important. So this feedback should be provided, for example, by electronic or digital response systems. So we should use or phone for permanently questioning students, or special devices. It is an example how to embed technology in each lesson. Also, if we speak about environment, we should speak about relevancy of curricula. We try to teach how to say, all the word futility. What is so I think important part of information in school books is useless and outdated.
You mean old-fashioned curricula?
Yes, old-fashioned curricula. For example, in my case, physics. The physics textbooks in school, they are the same like 50 years ago. So school textbook doesn't mirror, doesn't reflect current situation in modern physics.
Mihail, I agree with you, but on the other hand, I think everybody needs some fundamental knowledge, some, I would say, classical knowledge or as a background. Otherwise, it's not possible to understand our world.
Yes.
For example,
Yes.
Newton
You
mechanics.
are right. You're completely right.
Newton mechanics exists in 21st century. It's from, I would say, from this perspective, nothing new.
Yes, but even this fundamental knowledge should be provided, should be taught in another manner, in a modern manner, with.
Mihail, you said I want to provoke you a little bit. You mentioned modern. I am so stressful with this term modern because what does it mean? What does it mean modern? I do understand that our, in particular, young people, young generation, are so comfortable, so familiar with technologies, with I want to avoid this more modern technologies, but anyway, with computer technologies, with ICT, etc. But at the same time, it would be interesting to know your opinion. We want to avoid difficulties. We want to avoid hard work at some extent. From one side, it's understandable. Why not to avoid? It's normal. It's natural approach. But I'm speaking about learning process. Why to put some effort? Why to invest my capabilities? Because let's go in an easy way, or let's find an easy way. Playing, entertaining. For example, it's quite often we're speaking not about education, but about entertainment. Please attract me, please engage me, please involve me, and it's somehow.
Yes, I'm agree with you completely, because I'm an opponent of ludic education, and have similar teaching approaches, which form the idea that school belongs to entertainment industry, but school should be far away to entertainment. School should be about work and about students' learning effort.
And I would say it's not only relates to secondary school students at this level, but also about university students, for example. Based on my personal experience, and not only because every day I'm discussing with different people, not only from Lithuania and also from colleagues from abroad, from other countries, and at some extent we approaching to the common picture that, for example, students just, I am taking part in lecture, please entertain me, please attract me. I am sitting just possible listening, possible not. It's becoming so superficial. And learning and studying somehow on surface, something on surface. As fast as possible, without deep understanding, without deep knowledge, without efforts or minimal efforts only.
The response to such a situation, when students want to entertain them, for example, is learning by doing approach. But learning by doing very often is misunderstood, and it is replaced with false Brownian movement of students in class. When students only repeat teachers' manipulations, when teacher show to students, let's say, a chemical reaction or something like this. I would like to say that we should not so easy replace conventional teaching. I said about modern gadgets, etc., but we should embed gadgets in conventional teaching, because all famous scientists, they learned in a conventional, usual manner. We have no yet examples of successful educational paradigms other than conventional, like learning by doing, learning by understanding,
by playing,
inquiry-based teaching. This interesting approach, very good approach, but we should very carefully use them. But in any pedagogical approach, in any pedagogical approach, we should don't forget about learning effort. Yes, modern gadgets. So it should be learning, hard learning, but with technology, and also an important moment. We should think about metacognition. What is metacognition? When student understand very well the way he or she learn. It is very important when a student may choose from different learning strategies. So not only teachers should understand and use different teaching strategies, but also every school student, maybe university student, should have several learning strategies in his arsenal.
And I obviously agree. And we have moved a little bit from science education, a little bit far from science education. It's related, interesting. And I found that you're taking part in EduScience project. Is it right?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
introduce this project, because it's interesting?
It is a project focused on applying constructivist teaching methods in science teaching. Again, with using of broad range of technology. I would say in this project the accent is put on reflexive learning. Reflexive learning it is similar, very close to inquiry-based learning. Also, the moment of peer instruction in every science classroom. What means peer instruction moment? Peer instruction, it means about when teacher allow students communicate between them. Communication between strong school students and less capable students, when they exchange ideas and when they use in their discussion, they use new scientific terms. Someone is calling. So I like very much this approach of peer instruction. Peer instruction was developed by Erich Mazur. Erich Mazur is a physicist in the United States, but
you see, it's typical also from sciences, from natural sciences.
Yes, but the method was proposed initially in the middle of 70s by Calalb from Donetsk. And Mazur developed some ideas of Calalb, maybe even without knowing about Calalb.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know in Russian language possible опорные конспекты or опорные схемы.
Опорные сигналы.
Опорные сигналы, right. This is a different term, and we study at university, and we know Calalb and some other colleagues, some other scientists, educators, but it's a pity that in so-called Western community, in Western world, it's not well known.
Yes. Now I remember that in late 80s, when I was a student at Fizmat faculty, yes, I wrote a scientific an article dedicated to the pedagogy of innovation, and especially to this signals. And this work was mentioned with gold medal at contest of students working for the USSR in '88. So it is my first love in terms of science.
Yeah, I remember I also took part in so-called pedagogical Olympiad. It was organized at pedagogical universities, if I remember well, in 1988, I think. I was third year university student, and it was Makarenko,
Yes.
named by Makarenko, a well-known educator, and in the future it was planned that possible I will go to this Olympiad in former Soviet level. But finally, after third year, I was recruited to Soviet military army, and this process was stopped. But anyway, I remember very well. It was pedagogical Olympiad, and we learned quite a lot, and I would say at good level. Okay, and my last interest from this topic. In Lithuania, we recently launched 10 regional STEAM centers. You know that STEAM movement or STEAM education, it's becoming popular. It's not new, but anyway, it's popular. And for example, in our case, we have 10 regional STEAM centers, and the idea is to coordinate in particular districts, to coordinate different additional scientific activities, to support schools, to support students and teachers, and to take some, to exchange with some possible didactical material, obviously, etc. And do you have something similar in Moldova?
About STEAM, in our university, we have opened a master program for school teachers focused only on STEM subject. So this master program prepares school teachers to lead STEM classes. Also, we have some teacher training courses focused in STEM education. But in my opinion, STEM usually is misunderstood. Why? Because STEM, this approach, if we want to implement STEM, we have to take some hours from math, some hours from physics, from chemistry, biology, maybe geography, some hours, and to organize STEM classes in such a way. So
generally it's integration. To integrate some subjects.
So we have to establish which terms or which topic from math and physics and chemistry should be learned together, and also taught together. So it is possible, but for this we have to revise curricula in math and all science subjects, and to build curricula for STEM discipline. But STEM in this way is not understood in the majority of countries. I saw and I meet some teachers from Brussels. They implement real STEM, providing hours, special hours for STEM classes, and these hours they are taken from math and physics. So we have to diminish the amount of hours from math and for physics also, and give hours to STEM. Only in such a way we should understand STEM. STEM is a good approach. STEM answers to many modern questions. STEM probably is the necessary tool, but STEM isn't panacea for sure. But
you know, a lot
yes.
of fashionable things exists also in education. Education is not an exception. Obviously, it's not an exception, and something modern, fashionable at this time. And yeah, and thanks a lot, because it's really interesting. And let's move to our last topic, relevant topic, and with many concerns around, and teacher education or teacher training, because you mentioned that you are working Tiraspol State University is mainly pedagogical university, right? And you preparing teachers, and I think that it would be right to say that in any context, in any case, teacher is central figure in education process, and his or her competence, his or her preparedness to teach, to work with students is crucial in having in mind the effectiveness, result, success, etc. And can you shortly give some picture about teacher education system?
I would speak a little about continuous education, not initial. Initial is similar in many countries, but continuous education in Moldova, we have teacher training courses, for example, for 10 credits, 10 European credits, European transfer credits.
Yeah, European credit transfer.
10 credits, 20 credits, and 60 credits. For example, in my university, Tiraspol State University, located in Chisinau, we have much more beneficiary of teacher training courses than beneficiaries of initial training for teachers. For example, last year, the total number of teachers who passed through various courses was 1,500 teachers about. It means one half. This number 1,500, it is one half from the total number of teachers who was trained in teacher training courses for continuous teacher education. 3,000 of teachers means about a little bit more than 10%. It is 11% from the total number of teachers in Moldova. So each 10th teacher in Moldova annually goes through such courses. I have to say that the majority of these courses are focused namely on how to teach in modern way. Because during initial teacher education, they learn classical pedagogy, conventional pedagogy, and attention to how to use technologies, especially, is not paid in initial education. So now the accent is put on modern teaching, various types of teaching, depending on profile of the teacher, because we organize courses not only for science teachers, but also for language teachers, for foreign languages, etc.
Is it common to obtain master degree for teachers, for example, in Moldova? Or
yes.
Is it enough to have, for example, a bachelor degree and that's all you can work at school?
If the teacher has only bachelor degree, he is allowed to work only in middle school, not in high school.
Lower secondary.
For high school, master degree is mandatory.
Mandatory, okay. And also it's interesting, do you have something like promotion system, for example, or ranking system, or special qualification levels for teachers, or not? For example, in Lithuania we have different levels of teachers, or
yes, we
like,
have
like teacher, like senior teacher, like teacher expert, for example, teacher expert.
we have 4 levels. 4 levels. The highest level is superior degree. Then goes the first degree, below the second degree, and without any degree. So the superior degree, if a teacher also has PhD, that's PhD, it is automatically recognized as superior degree.
Does it connected, for example, is it connected with salary?
Yes, for sure it is connected, and the discrepancy between them is, for example, if the teacher has no degree, the salary is more than twice below the salary of first degree teacher.
But this is we are not speaking about bachelor degree. We are speaking about different degrees.
Yes,
like qualification level.
yes.
Right? Okay.
Right. So the initial teacher, young teacher without any degree, he is paid, or she is paid with 200 euros. 200 euros, and the highest level it is, as I said already today, 500 euros. So the difference is important.
And for example, another issue is important. Lithuania, some years ago, not it was like discussion on so-called national ideas in Lithuania, and one of them was teacher profession. The teacher profession in near future, approximately till 2024, 2025, should become the most prestigious profession. It's okay, as a national idea, it's obviously good, but I hope that both of us understand that it's not so easy. It's not just words. It also includes economical, financial, political, ideological, finally, issues in this topic. How to make teaching profession the most prestigious. And what about Moldova? Is teacher profession prestigious or not?
Completely not prestigious, because in pedagogical universities, majority of students their marks from school are below 8 or below B or C for majority of students. So the quality of whole educational system completely depends by the quality of inputs in educational system, and this aspect, human aspect, is very important to provide quality in education. So I know in other countries they try to select students for pedagogical profession from the first third from the graduates of high school. In our case, it is the second third. The first third, as I mentioned today, they go abroad, and we are obliged to work with other students. So it is a permanent decline. Permanent decline. So yes.
In Lithuania, for some years, we introduced a special procedure, so-called motivational test. It's not a typical test, but it's mainly conversation, interview, some other procedures. But for candidates who want to enter pedagogical study program or are willing to become a teacher, they need to pass this motivational test, special procedure. I am not sure about effect of this approach or effectiveness of this approach, but anyway it works. It works, and students should pass. Students should pass this motivation procedure. Do you have something similar or not?
In order to have such a procedure to measure their motivation, you should have some contest between candidates. So the number of available places should be a little bit less, at least, than the number of candidates. But in our country, we have available, let's say, 15 places for physics and informatics per country. 15 places annually, and they come 5 students.
Yeah. Why do you need motivation? Motivation procedures? No way. It makes no sense.
We should thank these 5 students for their coming. So
yeah, but my typical question in this situation is how to prepare such students as I would say raw material from the beginning, from the first year to the fourth possible or the last year. How to prepare a good teacher from politely speaking, not so good material.
Yes, but as I answered already, as I said, if the student is mentally health, we see some willingness and some commitment from his part, so the problem should be solved positively. In many cases, in the majority of cases, we succeed to prepare teachers for school. But yes, quality of these teachers requires more.
And let's move shortly about current situation, because it's a worldwide problem, pandemic situation, and connected with COVID. In view of school closures, for example, in times of pandemic, teachers, students, and school administrations, etc., had to face variety of challenges and a lot of challenges. And everybody of us feel that we needed to elaborate or to apply different strategies for education, including online remote teaching and learning. But another phenomena exists, possible not in all countries obviously, but in some countries, so-called digital divide, because if we would compare some infrastructure, some educational infrastructure, some equipment, etc., this digital divide quite large. We can observe it. Can you shortly present your context, your country context?
About digital divide, the situation is quite different in school and universities. For example, in our university, at our physics and math department, we provide each student with laptop. Absolutely. In school, the situation is difficult, but they in school, all schools in Moldova today learn on site. They work on site, not offline, but physically, physics presence. In university, we work online. That's why we provide computers to each student, university student. But I would give such an example. Master students, they graduated last summer, graduated a group of master students. All of them are teachers, school teachers. I saw them only once at when they presented their graduation thesis.
It's difficult. It's difficult.
Now the same situation. I have courses the second year, and I didn't see them physically. So I don't know how they look, my students. So I will meet them in city, in a mall, and we won't recognize each other.
Yeah, it's quite. By the way, recently we finished. One part is finished, and some parts on the progress, current research, including bachelor level students and master level students. By the way, in two countries, in Lithuania and Romania, because we're collaborating with colleagues from Bucharest and from Târgoviște, from Valahia University in Târgoviște, and its results quite interesting and at some extent surprising, because, for example, we fixed some obvious differences in comparison with Romanian students and Lithuanian students. In particular, having in mind some teaching and learning activities after pandemic. For example, lectures. The most preferable activity. The similar, around 80% of students answered that they agree to continue lecturing in such a way. It means online. But for example, homework assignments, individual projects, group works, etc. Such activities quite different evaluation from students' point of view. Obviously, we continue analysis, and it's interesting. But in my experience, because I'm mainly working with master students in education, and I realized that for them it's quite comfortable to work online, remotely, and they are not willing to return back to university. One main argument is that maybe not all, but majority of them are working people. They have job positions somewhere, etc. And for them, it's quite flexible, quite appropriate to work online, to have studies online. And they are not happy to. For example, I found in some questionnaires as additional explanation from one university, because our sample consisted from students from 3 universities in Lithuania, and the explanation was all our group asked university managers to give us permission to work online. Otherwise, it would not be possible for us to take part, to continue study process, because we are working people. We want to have such an opportunity to study online. And I think that after pandemic, we will continue online. I'm not talking about other study programs like in pure sciences, for example, in medicine, etc., but in social sciences, in general, it's possible. What do you think?
I also was thinking about this issue. For master degree students, I'm completely agree that we should continue online. due to many reasons. The main reason students are from different cities, different localities, so they have no possibility to travel 100 kilometers for lessons. So we should work online in this case. And they also, in online, they work a lot on homework. I distribute so the seminars, the classical seminars, I replace with homework, and I put the accent on permanent permanent homework after each online lesson. I give some task for homework. In such a way, I replace the examination with permanent homework. So and at the end of the course, I evaluate the homework from several lessons, and I calculate the average mark. Because it's very difficult to organize examination online without cheating.
Yeah.
So it's better to work permanently, small home task. But in the case of bachelor studies, physics, physical meetings should be mandatory.
Yeah, because
yes, we should work in class, because initial training is very important.
Yeah, and it depends
when we
study program,
the base for different fundamental science.
Obviously. Oh, okay, Mihail, it's really interesting, and it would be possible to continue, but our time is limited and it's running quite fast. And but at very end, I want to look into the future and future of education in Moldova, for example. Can you give some, for example, 3 characteristics of or 3 features of education? Let's imagine that you are president of the state. Can you give some, let's say, 3 features, 3 characteristics of the future, education future?
For school level or university?
In general, or in school level?
For school level, first measure is to reduce the number of school disciplines and to revise curricula.
Okay.
I have made some calculations, and I understood that if we reduce the number of hours and with the same money, yes, with the same money, we should increase twice up to 3 times the salary of teachers. In such a way, a good teacher in Moldova is very feasible to obtain a salary of 1,500 euros. It is possible. So it is the first measure. Also, the second in universities, university should provide relevant studies, relevant for labor market, relevant in and modern knowledge in order to make our students able to work in digital area, not only in conventional field. So the accent in universities, I think, should be put on IT component in education of every specialist, because I faced such a problem. I organized many teacher training courses, and the majority of them, even they are old and don't know very well PC. So we should educate every kind of teachers in IT. Some initial basic knowledge should be provided for every teachers. Maybe not only for teachers, but for each profession. For each profession, we should think about digitalization.
Okay, this was second. And third one?
And the third one, we should work in should include our universities in global concerns. Should link universities with other important universities in Europe and globally in such a way. So I think that it is a good idea that borders between universities should be removed in order to provide reliable quality for all students. We should think about such an internationalization process, but it is more than internationalization. It is about communicating with vessels. Yes.
Okay. So our discussion is approaching to end. We are discussing already 2 hours, approximately 2.5 hours. It's quite long discussion, but I think that we both of us feel that a lot of interesting issues were not discussed, but maybe in the near future it will be again another possibility to discuss, possible focused on some interesting topics, on some narrow topics, why not? And once again, it was really interesting and meaningful to discuss all of these issues, different issues, educational system, something about higher education system, about some challenges, etc., and to learn more about education in your country. And I hope that you will successfully overcome all the challenges that arise today and possible in the future. And so I take this opportunity to wish you every success, both in your academic and personal life, and in general to your country as a whole. Success to Moldova. in any context, in any direction, and I hope that in 5 years or 10 years, possibly we will discuss about good results in general. Thank you very much. And possibly you want also to add some final words to our discussion.
First of all, thank you, Vincentas, for inviting me, for opening this discussion about our educational systems. I hope that one day our educational system will be closer and we will work in the same European environment. As I said, this is our main goal, European integration. During our discussion, I understood for me the situation in Moldova. And once again I realized the problem we face as a small country in this difficult, tough times. And also during our discussion, I remember that I was in Šiauliai more than 30 years ago, and now I hope that will be again a possibility to visit Šiauliai and for you to visit Moldova, because Moldova is famous with our wines.
Yes, I want
yes.
to this.
Moldavian wine. You will visit with pleasure our underground cities, with every types of wine. So let's hope in joint projects focused on education, science education, maybe. Thank you, Vincentas, again.
Yeah. Thank you very much once again, and good luck to Moldova, and personally to you and your colleagues, academic colleagues, and your relatives, and good luck to Moldova.
Thank you. Have a nice week.